First thing is the observer and intra-observer variation we talked about, and the kappa is the measurement for that, and the instrument variation is by standardizing the instrument and also adding a sort of control value for that. Okay, what is reliability? Reliability is reproducibility, or repeatedly you should get the same measurement again and again. It is not the same as validity. For example, consistently, if I record weight of a patient on a weighing scale, consistently it is giving around 65 or whatever is his weight, 65 plus minus 500 or 1 kilograms, it is reliable. But if his true weight is 70 and if it is giving consistently 65, then I know it is not reliable. It is reliable, all right, but this is not valid. So there is what is also called the systematic error and a sort of random error. Random error is distributed on either side of the true value. Systematic error is consistently higher or consistently lower. Systematic error is called the bias. Random error is called the noise. Okay. And then you have what is called the what is validity we have done. What are inclusion and exclusion criteria? The criteria that are used to take patients into the study. Who are the people who are going to get into the study and whom you will not be interested to include them in the study. This you have to decide depending on the study question. This you should not say at the end of the study. Before the start of the study, you should decide who are the patients who are going to be included and who are the patients who are going to be excluded. Then what we have, what is the meaning of a confounder? Confounder is a sort of variable which has got an effect either on the intervention or on the outcome. The example I gave you was when you are studying the effect of diabetes and heart disease, age, hypertension, obesity, dyslipidemia could be a confounder. So this is how do I avoid the confounders? By matching both the groups or by randomizing both the groups. If I am not randomizing, I must ensure that there are enough number of aged people here, enough number of aged people, same number there, a good number of BP patient, high BP patient, there also similar number, dyslipidemia here, dyslipidemia there, like that, try to distribute them equally. So what is meant by confounder? I have already answered. What study design best avoids confounding? What study design avoids confounding? Of course, randomization. Randomization takes care of confounding. Okay. And then what is meant by single blind and double blind? By now you must have been very clear. Investigator and patient both are blinded. They do not know what is the active intervention and the comparison control intervention. Then that is called a double blind. If only patient or the investigator is blinded, it is called a single blind. Better to have double blind or triple blind, but the complexity increases. What is stratification? If we a priori know that a particular variable plays a great part in the outcome, we see that the people with that variable are equally distributed in both. For example, COVID mortality is very much dependent on the age. Any study should have the control arm and the test arm should have equal number of people who are aged and who are younger also. Hawthorne effect is when we are being observed, we behave differently. When we are not being observed, we do not behave as we are expected to. In a research study, the subjects are being observed very closely. The investigator also observes with lot of keenness. That might throw some extra bias. Normally, if you are not in the study, a little rash on the skin, patient may rub it on, I did not even think about it. But if investigator says, no, this is an adverse reaction, I have to report, because that is something like a bias called the Hawthorne effect. What is random error? What is systematic error? I think we have discussed that very clearly. And what is bias? Bias means a systematic deviation of an observation away from the true value. The best thing is if the true value of the weight is 65 and the biased instrument always gives 5 less or 5 more, and that is a biased value. Okay. Particularly bias occurs whenever you are doing measurements in terms of numbers. So also sometimes bias occurs mild, moderate, and severe. You want to classify, and there will be a lot of subjectivity is involved in saying what is mild, moderate, and severe. There could be a bias. A mild symptom patient may think exaggerate and say it is moderate or severe. That is why we use what are called the pain scales. The pain scale will be 0 to 1. Supposing you want to ask the patient about the pain, how the pain is before the treatment or after the treatment, you give him a chart. You now tell me whether pain 0 means here, 10 means same as what you started, you pick up a number. So you objectify the subjective experiences also by doing a scoring thing. And then what you have, what is bias? And then you have, if you wish to do a drug trial, what are the study designs which are best? Can you tell me that? Most of you should have written a drug trial. The best design would be randomized control trial or a non-randomized control trial or a prospective trial will be the best design, either randomized or non-randomized. You can take a group of cohort of people who had drug A, cohort of people who have drug B and see that they are matched and prospectively follow. Okay, and then that is the prospective design is always good, out of which randomized double blind or randomized non-blind studies are good. What are the outcome measures? Give examples of primary and secondary outcome measures. Outcome measure is any measurement which you would take as a valid endpoint for the intervention. For example, I am studying blood pressure and a medication. The first primary outcome is my drug going to reduce the blood pressure? Did it reduce? So measurement of blood pressure before and after will be the primary outcome. The secondary outcome will be, did my intervention not only reduce blood pressure, but also reduce a very important variable in hypertension called the left ventricular hypertrophy. So do an echo before and echo after 6 months. Or it should reduce microalbuminuria. All blood pressure medications are supposed to protect the kidney. That could be a secondary outcome. Okay, it reduced blood pressure, all right. Did it protect the kidney in terms of microalbuminuria? Likewise, primary and secondary outcomes can be classified. And then a priori you have to decide, not after the study. After collecting the data, you can't analyze this is the primary outcome. First of all, you have to say what is your primary interest. Second of all, you should know what are the other 2-3 things which you may be interested. There may be one or more than one primary outcome also. Sometimes in mortality studies, death is the primary outcome, recovery is the secondary outcome, duration of illness is the other outcome, quality of life is the other outcome, and then expensive nature of the treatment will be the other outcome. All those things will be different. So the primary outcome should be very hard outcome and tangible outcome. Secondary outcomes can be comparatively soft outcomes. A hard outcome you have to always use in terms of primary outcome. It must be measurable and very tangible. So this is what I meant by these questions. And if you have any doubts, one-to-one, you can contact me. I'm ending this sharing there, and I'm going to start the next module. Okay. Bindu Nair. Okay, fine. Now we'll go about the how to write a pro forma or prepare a questionnaire for your study. Okay, the research process, as you can see here, involves the first thing is the first of all, what you have to do is research idea. That is what you started giving me the answer yesterday. What is your research idea? And that should be formulated into a proper question, research question. Once you have a research question, then you what is happening? Literature review. I told you this is fundamental to any study design. Literature review can be 2 types. First one is wider reading of the subject. If I am doing a study on fatty liver and diabetes, I will first read about fatty liver in general. That is the width of the study. Then I narrow it down to diabetes and fatty liver as an in-depth study, both the width and the depth. 3 months or so you should spend 2 months on the width and 1 month on the depth of the study and note down the current state of knowledge. Then you formulate your research question and you modify it. Then there will be theoretical formulation of a research problem. So that is your question formation, which will be finer. F is feasible, I interesting, a novel, E ethical, and R sort of reliable and reproducible, generalizable, and all that. So this is a finer theoretical formulation. Then your empirical research question should be operationalized. how do I put it into sort of a design? Then you pick up a design depending on the question. If it is causation, it should be either case control study or a short causation like biryani and diarrhea. It can be a prospective study. Some things will take long time for the outcome to occur. So we will not have time for 2 or 3 years, 4 years to wait. For some interventions, the outcome occurs immediately. So you can have a prospective study. So that's about the research design selecting. And if you are selecting about treatment, better to select a randomized design. Then comes the data collection. After the data is collected, then the analysis, then empirical research question, again new research question, interpretation, comparison with previous research, and then conclusions and new research ideas. This is how the cycle goes. Now, this module tells you about the data collection part of it. Okay. So, do patients who have stroke and have normal BP at admission have better outcome? The question is, somebody said, patient who has presented with normal BP, but of course they had a stroke, a hemiplegia, or a cerebral involvement, stroke, people with normal blood pressure have a better outcome. That is the hypothesis. Normally we believe, isn't it? Stroke is directly related to the level of blood pressure. If somebody has got a normal blood pressure, if he had a stroke, he must have a properly better outcome. This is what they wanted to evaluate. This is a hypothetical study, of course. I am presenting you. Do patients who have stroke and have normal BP on admission have better outcome? So we have to first see whether the question is finer. Is it feasible? Yes, it is feasible. We do have stroke patients. We can measure blood pressure. We can see the outcome also, whether they have recovered or not. Then is it interesting? Certainly it is interesting to know this answer, and it is novel, may not be very novel, but in your area you can try. E is ethical, certainly ethical. We are not doing any unethical, and of course is the relevant. Relevancy R. Then introduction. Data collection is the process of gathering and measuring information on variables of interest. What are the variables of interest? You must first document stroke. You must also document blood pressure variability. So you must see, and also how the stroke is progressing. Those also you have to collect the data. Emphasis is always in data collection. You have to be as accurate as possible and as honest as possible. Don't try to write something without actually observing. That is not research, that is manipulation. Okay. Now, consequence of improperly collected data. Supposing I am not accurate, I am not able to be honest, and I don't properly measure blood pressure, I don't properly quantify stroke, then it will not answer your research question. Your entire effort will be wasted, and you will be writing something from your mind or from the book or somebody else's paper and not your own finding. Inability to repeat and validate the study because you have not used the proper thing, you cannot repeat it elsewhere, and then nobody will be able to reproduce your data. Before data collection begins, important for the investigator to specify which variable will be studied. In this particular study, which variable will you study? Of course, the blood pressure on admission and blood pressure subsequently during hospitalization. The stroke on admission, the intensity, type of stroke, hemorrhagic, or it is thrombosis or embolic stroke, and also the how it progressed, and of course the various other things associated with stroke, like the age, hypertension, diabetes, and then previous history of stroke, and then all the things are important. What method of measurement is used, that also will have a bearing. The analysis of data will depend upon the type of measurement. Type of measurement here in medical terms, in clinical terms, research, we call it as variable. What is a variable you need to understand? Tomorrow you will get a better idea about that. Variable is something which you measure as a sort of primary or secondary outcome, or also as an intervention that you start doing it as a variable. For example, BP measurement is a variable. Stroke assessment is a variable. So like that, you have to, you suppose for example, there is a question, temperature and febrile seizures. Temperature measurement is a variable. Documenting febrile seizures is a variable. So that is how the variable is. So we'll see a little more about the variables in the next section tomorrow. But today we will concentrate on the pro forma development. Which variable I want to study? There will be one dependent variable and there will be independent variables. Dependent variable in the question that we have chosen is, we said that baseline blood pressure will have a positive outcome in the stroke. So the dependent variable is the baseline blood pressure, normal or abnormal, and the independent variable will be the progress of the stroke. Exposure variable is the baseline variable. Outcome variable, confounding variables here in this particular study will be age, diabetes, previous history of stroke, family history, dyslipidemia. All those things will be confounding variables. Now, acute ischemic stroke, we would like to include. Our study patients will be, we are not going to study chronic stroke. We have to say we are going to restrict it to the acute ischemic stroke. Why? Because we wanted to see the effect of baseline blood pressure. If you take a chronic stroke, you will not be able to really find out the answer. And you have to include not pediatric patients. They said 18 years. I would prefer to take people who are 30 years and more, or 40 years, whatever is the age group that we wanted to do it. Depending on your question, you can decide the age. There is no hard and fast rule. You have to study in this age only, depending on your hypothesis. Now, next question is, two groups I have to form. What are the two groups I would form at the baseline? Those who had a normal blood pressure. What is normal blood pressure? Then you have to say 140, less than 140 or less than 90 is diastolic, or a mean arterial pressure. You know how to calculate a mean arterial pressure of less than 1.105. You call it as normal. Anybody above that, you call it as increased blood pressure on admission. And when do you want to measure? You will say within 24 hours of stroke, I will take the baseline blood pressure. Not if the stroke has occurred now, after 1 week you take, it is not relevant. So how many readings you would like to take? Maybe one reading may not be adequate, multiple readings, average of readings. These you have to answer first. In this particular question, first of all, we have to decide what is normal. Second of all, when you want to measure within 24 hours, how many measurements I would do, whether the patient will be continuing on the drugs or without the drugs I would like to measure, that has to be understood. So our study will have a comparison. What is the comparison group? Patients with acute ischemic stroke who do not have normal blood pressure. Okay, our hypothesis is normal blood pressure will have a better outcome. So if I only study the normal blood pressure people without there being a comparison group, how do I know that in the abnormal blood pressure also the recovery occurs? Obviously, I must have a comparison group. My comparison group would be those all patients who did not have normal blood pressure but had acute ischemic stroke will be my comparison group. You understand? Now we are designing a study on the hypothesis that normal blood pressure is associated with a positive outcome. So we need a comparison group. Our comparison group is people who do not have normal blood pressure on admission but who had stroke. Now, the outcome. What is our outcome? Outcome is improvement in the stroke. What is improvement in stroke? Improvement in the power, improvement in the disability, improvement in the level of consciousness, improvement in the bladder function, improvement in the bowel function, improvement in the ability to swallow, improvement in the ability to speak, improvement in the ability to cognize. You can decide what are all your outcomes. Out of them, the most important would be the residual disability, the power, the dysphagia, and cognition may be important variables. You call them, some of them as primary, some of them as secondary. Disability, residual disability could be a very important outcome. Residual disability, you can say whether the patient is able to walk on his own without support, whether he requires a support, whether he is bedridden, whether he can come out of the bed and go to the toilet. You can classify in various ways. So the outcome has to be decided a priori. Primary variable or secondary outcome also you can keep. So instead of saying something objectively, yes, he has improved or no, he has improved, better to use a scoring. Like M-Rankin scale of 90-day event is a very well recognized way of assessing the sort of improvement in the stroke. Likewise, for every disease, there will be already researched and validated scores will be there. Better you use one of the scores for that. Here, no symptoms at all, 0 and 6 means patient is dead. Like that, there will be varying levels of that ranking scoring. You can use any other scoring also which you like, but provided that is already researched and found out to be a valid measure and a reliable measure. So how do I correctly measure? Measurement which we are making and recording should be accurate what we intend to measure. For example, if I want to measure hemoglobin level, I can't look at the tongue and take a tongogram and then say whether anemic or not. It's a very poor way of saying a person is anemic or not. Unless somebody is grossly anemic, looking at the tongue will not tell you. Taking a hemoglobin measurement is an objective measurement. In research, particularly when you wanted to compare two groups, you must have an objective measure. Looking at the tongue versus hemoglobin, looking at the conjunctiva versus value of bilirubin, looking at the color of the urine versus the measurement of the bile pigments in the urine, looking at the general well-being versus microalbuminuria. So anything objective will be more sound, and you will get a very valid answer. Measurement should be given, should be consistent, and repeatedly inter-observer variation, the kappa coefficient which I have told you has to be known before that. And now let us say we have designed the study. The summary of the study looks like this. What is that? Acute ischemic stroke patients I have taken who are more than 18 years. I am not interested in chronic stroke. I am not interested in some diseases which cause pediatric stroke. So I am interested in adult. 18 years is the adult population. Adult population, acute ischemic stroke. And the strokes are three types. As you know, ischemic stroke, and then hemorrhagic stroke, and embolic stroke. Hemorrhagic and embolic I have excluded. Only thrombotic stroke or the ischemic stroke only I have included. Very clearly, acute, not chronic, ischemic, not hemorrhagic and embolic, age group more than 18 or whatever you have chosen. Then assemble two groups. One group, those who had a normal blood pressure. What is normal blood pressure? Definition here is mean arterial pressure less than 105. In the first 24 hours, taken of two measurements, the average of that. Raised blood pressure more than MAP 105 in the first 24 hours is called the raised blood pressure. Then what did I assess? Very clearly, what is my MRS score at the end of, that is Rankin score. MRS score is the Rankin score at the end of 90 days. Some objective measure of assessment rather than subjectively, okay, Mr. Gopal Rao, you have improved, very nice. Another person, Krishna, you have not improved. This is subjective assessment is not used. You should go by objective criteria. The objective criteria includes power, disability, motor function, sensory function, and then your dysphagia, bladder control, bowel control, and then ability to cope with their own routine activities. All these summarily are included in that Rankin score. So you use some criterion which is already valid, and now your study is almost over. If you know this is the way you wanted to do it, then document everybody who has got 18 years or more. We have not randomized that because we can't randomly say you people will have more blood pressure, you people will have less blood pressure. I can't increase the blood pressure. Can you see me also?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now this is a very simple questions related to your pro forma design. I suggest all the postgraduates who have given the questions to yesterday, please refine your questions, including a comparison group. As we have discussed now, without a comparison group, the study will not be really worthy of it. It will become just a descriptive study. I want to look at the profile of diabetes in a jaundice patient. What does it tell? It will tell how many jaundice patients had diabetes. I want to look at the history of alcoholism in jaundice patient. It will not tell anything unless you have a comparison group. So build in a suitable comparison group into your question, rewrite those questions, and then share with me. That is exercise 1. Exercise 2 is design a short study pro forma for the Horlicks study. The hypothesis is 2 times Horlicks, 2 spoons in a glass of milk of 200 ml given to children between, let us say, whatever is the age group you want to say, 3 to 15 years will have an increase in the height. And design a pro forma for that. who will be included, who will be excluded, what you want to measure, how do you standardize the measurement, what are the confounding variables there, all those things. This is the exercise number 2 for you. You can develop a pro forma slowly for your own research question also. That will be a long-term objective. Okay. Now let us see what is data collection. Data collection in research means collecting information related to the exposure variable or the starting variable, the comparison variable, and also the outcome variable. In the study, we just looked at the comparison variable is with and without blood pressure. Those who had normal blood pressure at admission, those who had elevated blood pressure. Okay. And then we are not interfering with the treatment. Whatever the clinician decides, let them decide. Whether those with admission blood pressure being normal, did they have a better outcome? That was the question. So data collection is collecting data about the patient particulars, the epidemiological particulars, and other related things to the variable of interest, the BP on admission, and the variable of outcome, which is the improvement in the MRS. That is the ranking scale, M ranking scale. That is about the data collection. What are the two essential things in data collection? I expect the answer honesty and accuracy. Honesty is a commodity which cannot be purchased in the market. It is within. Nobody knows whether you have really examined the patient and written or whether you have just ticked it out of your mind, whatever you wanted. That intellectual honesty or scientific honesty, if we do not have, we don't have the metal with us to do research. Let it be good, let it be bad. We will analyze at the end, but let us not be biased and say, yes, it is working, it is not working, yes, it is useful, not useful in a biased way. Honestly record the data. Don't sit in a room and tick all the boxes, yes or no, in the pro forma and prepare 50 pro forma. That analysis is just waste. Those pro forma only are worth a dustbin without actually seeing the patients or the lab values and putting that. So that is what I expect. Honesty and accuracy in recording the data. Don't illegibly record something. Accurately, legibly you record, preferably in numbers, objectively. What are the three prerequisites for data collection? What are the three prerequisites? One is the exposure variable. That is here in this particular study with BP, without the admission BP, higher or lower. Then second one is the outcome variable, M ranking score in this part. The third one is the confounding variable. Confounding variable in a case of stroke study will of course be diabetes, dyslipidemia, age, myocardial infarction, any associated things are the confounding variables. We have to collect data on the confounding variables also. The three I am expecting you to write. Number one, the exposure variable or the variable you are interested to study the relationship with, like here in this case, the blood pressure being normal at admission or higher at admission. Then the outcome variable, in this case, the M ranking score. And the third will be the confounding variables, which I have already explained to you. The third question, what is exposure variable and what is outcome variable? Already answered. Exposure variable is the one which separates the groups into two, like those who had the vaccine, those who did not have the vaccine, those who had amlodipine, those who had cilidipine, those who had hepatitis B, those who did not have hepatitis B, those who had diabetes, did not have diabetes. That is the exposure which you are trying to look at. Outcome variables are hepatitis B, how many had hepatocellular cancer, HCC, hepatitis B, no hepatitis B, how many had HCC. That is the outcome. Likewise, diabetes, how many had fatty liver, non-diabetic, how many had fatty liver. That is the outcome variable, is the fatty liver there. Like vaccine trial, how many with the vaccine had antibodies and protection, how many without the vaccine naturally had the antibodies and protection, will be the outcome variable. So exposure variable is when you start. Outcome variable is the end point where you are going to measure. Okay, what are primary and secondary outcomes? Several times I have given examples. For example, in a study on blood pressure control, BP drop with a medicine is the primary variable. LV dysfunction and LVH will be secondary variable, and then the important mortality, stroke, and control the microalbuminuria, they all can be the secondary variables. Okay. What is pre-testing of the proforma? This I didn't tell you. This is what exactly we have to do. Whenever we design a proforma, instead of embarking on the 300 or 400 patients or in a community study of 5,000 or 10,000 people, we pre-test on around 10 subjects and see whether the questions are properly answerable, whether we can get a proper response or not. Preferable than that would be prepare the proforma and circulate to your postgraduate colleagues and ask them to see whether the proforma really made a meaning in their mind and what answers they would give if they were the study subject. Then you test it on a few patients who are not enrolled in the study. That is called the pre-testing, and giving to your peers is the pre-testing. And once that is tested, you refine the questionnaire. Wherever it is not clear, you make them better and then finalize the proforma. Once finalized, you should not keep on meddling it during the study. The same proforma should be used for both the exposed group and the unexposed group. And in a similar way, and the measurement should be made similarly in both the patients, both the groups. Now, why training is essential for data recording? This is to, training is if you are employing more than one investigator and to record the things, you need to train. If you alone are doing, you need to train yourself. This is to minimize inter-observer and intra-observer variation. So training is an essential component of minimizing the inter and intra-observer variation and also the instrument variation also, in order to see whether the instrument is performing properly or not. What are the important properties of a measurement variable? What is the measurement variable? What are the important properties? Two important properties, reproducibility or reliability. The second one is validity. Reliability and validity, and of course, observer agreement, kappa being higher, and then standardization, and then having a control, lab control. These are also measurement variable properties. Most important properties are reliability. Reliability means giving the same reading again and again any number of times you take within a small range, acceptable range. Validity is giving the right value. So I given the example 65 kilos weight. Always it should give you a reading around 65 and not 75. That means there is a validity issue. Validity is we are measuring the truth. Reliability is getting the repeated values, same range, which is the best study design if I decide to do a causation. Causation means a particular agent causes a disease or doesn't cause a disease. So I can't randomly allocate causation to give a disease to a person. So we have to use only a retrospective study or a prospective naturally occurring study which is an analytical study. And of course, not a randomized study. The better thing to do as a causation usually is a retrospective study and a short prospective study if the cause and effect are very much close to one another. What is the first section of the proforma? It should be the patient ID details, identification details. Second section will be the epidemiological details. Third section will be the history. Fourth section will be your examination and measurements. Fifth section will be measurements of outcome. And any other things you can say, last one, a descriptive paragraph you can leave, where you want to write something special about that particular patient, you can always write, which you may or may not analyze the thing. What will be the best way to record data, either open-ended or closed? Preferably closed-ended. It can be yes or no, it can be grade 1, 2, 3, 4, it can be mild, moderate, severe, or it can be the absolute number itself. What is the level of cholesterol? Instead of saying raised or not, what is the absolute value you can take. When the values are not numbers, then you can order them into mild, moderate, severe, or you can say 1, 2, 3, 4, or a pain scale or whatever it is, or yes, no answers. These are what are called the closed-ended. Never leave it open-ended because difficult to write and interpret open-ended answers. Open-ended means they can write a page of essay about the answer, or they may say yes or no, or a very vague answer, does not know, something like that. So don't leave them open-ended. Always leave them closed-ended, either yes, no, or an ordinal variable, mild, moderate, severe, or a pain scale, or an absolute measurement of height, weight, cholesterol, sugar, heart rate, whatever it is, like that. What is the importance of having all measurements and treatments in same in the both the groups? Of course, they have to be same. If they are different, you cannot interpret whether the intervention is the cause of the effect or your measurements are different. Supposing I measured blood pressure in the lying down position in one group, in the study group, and a standing position in the other group, definitely they are not comparable. Likewise, when I measured the blood sugar after fasting, after postprandial in one group, fasting in the other group, they are not comparable. So you have to have same things comparable. What is investigator bias? This is the investigator bias means always expecting that a particular intervention will work. If I have a preformed idea that people with normal blood pressure will have a better stroke outcome, I will always try to say, yeah, this fellow must have improved. If I know that the blood pressure is higher, I may say, okay, he has got high blood pressure to start with. That's why probably he is not improving. So this is kind of investigator bias. How do I avoid it? The person who records the initial blood pressure will be different from the person who scores the M Rankin score. Like, or you randomize it. If randomize is not possible, exposure is recorded by one person, outcome is recorded independent by an independent observer. He gives the Rankin score. He is not aware of the baseline blood pressure. He can be blinded to that, and you can avoid the investigator bias. What are double barrel questions? Do you take idli, masala dosa, and also the vada in the morning? That is a triple barrel question. Do you take idli in the morning as breakfast? That is a single barrel question. So always keep single barrel question. Do you have hypertension, diabetes, and dyslipidemia? If I put the question, then which one he will answer? So we have to give them single barrel questions and not have a multiple answers, because we do not know to which he is answering yes or no. What is the necessity to keep the pro forma short and simple? It goes without saying, if the pro forma is more than 3 pages, neither I will have the interest and time to spend, nor the patient will have the time to interest to spend with the pro forma. And data that is collected, which is not analyzed, is redundant and a waste of time for you. Please do not include anything which you are not going to analyze. For example, whether he is in Ragolu or whether he is in the neighboring village, whether he belongs to the Andhra Pradesh, whether he speaks Hindi or English. This is not, if you are not going to analyze that information, don't collect the data at all. If the language has got a barrier on the question, then probably you can improve. Otherwise, there is no point in that. So whatever variable you are choosing, a priori decide, these are the variables I am going to collect, and this is the change I wanted to look at. Other than that, don't include anything which is not relevant here. Don't also collect information about improvement of what things which are not going to analyze. That way the pro forma can be kept very simple. Okay. So I'm sharing it, stopping this. Yesterday's questions I'm just showing once for you, and so that you can see what we have done yesterday, and we will close today's work with that. And what did we do? We have got the modules. Yesterday, what module? We discussed study designs. I'm opening that question.